So welcome to another edition of Globespan 24x7. I am Vishnu Bisram. If it's Wednesday, it is Globespan 24x7, owned and operated by Mr. Nohar Singh. And with us tonight is Mr. Devin Bassoon, who is the techie operator. Tonight, the program will be moderated by Ms. Shalima Mohammed. She has three fantastic guests. I am merely joining them. Hopefully, I may be able to make a contribution. Ms. Shalima Mohammed is from Trinidad and Tobago. She is an educator and researcher. She obtained her master's degree and MBP, Master's in Business Psychology, from Franklin University in the United States. She is a strong advocate for health and wellness practices based on traditional and alternative healing. Welcome, Shalima Mohammed. I now turn over the program to you to be our moderator tonight and for you to introduce our three wonderful guests this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Bisram, and thank you, Globespan, for this opportunity. Tonight we have Mr. Zulfikar Ali, who is Guyana's Deputy Ambassador in Washington, D.C. Welcome, sir. We have also Mr. Bhagwandin, who is a financial analyst in Guyana. And we have Mr. Shaun Rampersad, who is the CEO at Rams Logistics, which is based in Trinidad. A warm welcome to all of you all. And today we are talking about investment opportunities and avoiding the Dutch disease in Guyana. So let's get right into it. I think the Dutch disease conversation really started for a while now, but Vice President Jack Day would have made a statement with regard to that, referencing Trinidad and Tobago and stating quite clearly that Guyana is not going to go down the path of Trinidad and Tobago in misusing the revenues to be derived from oil and gas. And that was supported by President Irfan Ali recently in the United Arab Emirates, where he would have attended a meeting under the Caribbean Investment Forum. So President Ali actually would have raised the issue and stated quite clearly Guyana's objective, which is to make Guyana the food basket of the Caribbean. But one of the key things that he would have shared in the UAE is that the goal is to build a framework that would ensure Guyana has the greatest level of productivity. And I thought that interesting to raise. So I want to ask, first of all, Mr. Ali, what exactly is the current level of productivity in Guyana such that it needs to be changed?
Well, thank you, Shalima and Vishnu, for having me on the program, and hello to my colleagues, Shaun and Joel. It's a very important question, and everyone who knows Guyana and know about the challenges that we have faced before. Some of them very insurmountable, and one of them is the cost of energy. That has impeded the growth of the private sector in Guyana for a very, very long time. And when we speak about moving Guyana forward, that is critical to our development going forward. So productivity, there are a range of things that will prevent you from being productive. But we have recognized, especially in the private sector in Guyana, that the cost of energy has been a very big impediment for that. We have a lot of resources, natural resources. We have great amount of land, vast amount of land, that, as you rightly said, we could be the breadbasket of the Caribbean. We can supply fruits and vegetables throughout the Caribbean and further afield. But if we do not solve the energy problem, we would not be able to do that. So President Ali is correct. And if you look at the steps that have been taken within the last couple months, which is to get the Gas to Shore project on stream, the Milo Falls project on stream. There's a lot of projects that are geared towards wind energy and solar farm. It will definitely solve that problem. So I would say the cost of energy is the biggest hamper for productivity right now.
Okay, great. Is there any particular sector that is being most adversely affected by that productivity, or is it
across the board? But when you talk about Guyana's competitiveness, I think the manufacturing sector is the one that has really not been allowed to grow as it should. So I will pinpoint that sector, but it's across the board because businesses suffer paying high electricity bills. They cannot be competitive compared to their colleagues in Trinidad and the rest of the region as well. The cost of electricity is too high in Guyana, and that prevents us from taking that next step that we need to take.
Okay, great. Okay, great. Thank you. So, Mr. Bhagwandin, you're a financial analyst and you work a lot with the private sector. Is that correct? Mr. Bhagwandin?
You could.
Okay, he seems to be having some internet issues there. So let me ask Mr. Rampersad this question. Please tell us a little bit, first of all, and this is for the benefit of the audience, a little bit about Ram's logistics, your operations in Guyana, and what are some of the challenges that you've been facing dealing with the Guyanese private sector?
Yeah, thank you very much, Shalima. Yeah, it's a really pleasure to be here, and really thanks to you and Dr. Bisram for having us, and good night to my colleague Zulfi and to Joel as well. Rams is a family business. My dad started this business in 1985, and I always tell people, all my Guyanese colleagues, Rams was born out of the worst of the oil and gas. Because if anybody knows what Trinidad looked like in 1985, we were going through the most terrible recession that anybody had ever seen for a very, very long time. And that's when my dad started the business. But 2013, we went to Guyana. And we went to Guyana. At that time in 2013, there was no discussion about oil. We went to Guyana to really look at what the commodity sector would look like in terms of bauxite, mining, gold, and agriculture. And I always tell people the first time I landed on the Essequibo River, I was just blown away. Like, because when you grow up, you think about Guyana, you think about Guyana as the Caribbean, and you think about it like Trinidad and Barbados and Antigua. And you go and you see the might of the Essequibo and you see what the hell the Essequibo is, and it blows your mind that how grand this place is. And as a person who's very passionate about logistics, when I saw the Essequibo River and the Demerara and the Berbice, I always thought, wow, those are the logistics gateways to South America. And I still believe that. I still believe that we would have an opportunity to service North Brazil and many other areas of South America using those massive waterways. And we'll be able to get a lot of the commodities out of Guyana using those waterways. But today in Guyana, Rams is about 500 people. We are really focused on the oil and gas sector. That's a big chunk of our business. And one of the things that I'm really passionate about at Rams is growing leaders and really increasing the stock of the leadership material in the Caribbean. And to me, that's one of the things I'm really, really happy about in Guyana. I feel like over the last few years, we've been able to attract and train and retain some top-notch Guyanese talent. And today, we have a group of about 20 senior managers in Guyana who are really going to not just do well for Rams, but who I'm pretty sure are going to do very well for the country as well. So it's been a real adventure. And the beautiful thing about it is that it's only just started because, Guyana is going to... I tell people, I'm a much older guy now, but if I was 21 and I just graduated from UWI again, and I didn't have a wife or kids, I would have moved to Guyana in a heartbeat. There's no other place in the world that has as much opportunity today as Guyana does. It's going to be very exciting.
Well, that's great to hear, but can you share with us the ease of doing business in Guyana? How did you get into the market? And if someone who is 21, unmarried and so on, wants to move into Guyana now and begin to do business, how are they going to go about doing that?
Yeah, but bear in mind that we did business in Trinidad, right? And the ease of doing business in Guyana is I would actually say a little bit better than it is in Trinidad. I think in Trinidad, we've put a lot of red tape in place. We've had a lot of industrial action. If you look at the public service in Trinidad, we've had our fair share of challenges for a long time. And in Guyana, I mean, it's certainly not the US, of course, but it's pretty good. I mean, I've had very, very positive experiences working in Guyana. And if I were 21 and looking to move to Guyana, there's so many opportunities for anybody who holds a CARICOM passport today. There's so many job openings. In fact, El Dorado Offshore, which is associated with RAMS, is one of the largest employers of people in the offshore sector. And you have hundreds of Guyanese, Trinidadians, Russians, Americans, Ukrainians. There are tons of jobs that are available in Guyana. And if you meet the qualifications for it, sometimes all you have to do is pack up yourself and go. If you're bright, you're smart, and you're willing to work hard, you will find opportunities in Guyana.
Well, it's interesting that you should raise that because Vice President Jagdeo would have cautioned what I consider to be a caution to Trinidadians. He says TNT citizens felt that they had a God-given right to displace Guyanese in our own country from our own resources. And then he says, to me, quite contradictory, I don't care who cuss me or what they cuss me for. We are not going to discriminate against Trinidadians. We want Trinidadian business to come here, but they have to come in partnership with our people. So right away I'm seeing, don't come here if you want jobs, or is it that Trinidadians are going there seeking jobs and something isn't right with their attitude? Are they being too arrogant? Shaun, since you're on the ground a lot of times, maybe you could share some of that. What are Trinidadians doing to alienate the Guyanese government in this way?
Yeah, I mean, and let me tell you, I think it's not something that happens now or recently. The first thing I think is that a lot of Trinidadians are they don't take very seriously how badly I feel Guyanese have been treated in Trinidad for a long time, right? And it's not just Guyanese, it's Venezuelans. I mean, I detest the way, some people treat Venezuelans in Trinidad. And President Jagdeo talked about, Piaco being a terrible airport. Shalima, I don't know when last, or what your experience is I like at Piaco, but even I have a lot of issues with the way people are treated in Piaco. I myself, I've been in a customs line for 4 hours in Piaco because customs was on a go slow or on a strike, right? So I think everybody needs to listen carefully to what everybody else is saying. And I think sometimes it's easy to listen and get emotional, but I think President Jagdeo makes a very good point that we have to be very cognizant of the way Guyanese feel and the way Guyanese feel they have been treated in Trinidad. And I think he makes a lot of other good points too when he says and he speaks about the fact that for a long time there have been tons of Guyanese who've also come to Trinidad and who have had very positive experiences. And some of my closest friends in Trinidad came from Guyana, people who are like my own family. So I think there's a lot of intermixing and a lot of good things that went on as well. But we also have to be very clear about the things that we did not do well. And we can't just brush those things under the carpet. So I think when you go to do business in Guyana, you have to bear those things in mind, like as if you go to do business in any other country. If I go to our Mexico offices or I go to our Colombia offices, I have to be very cognizant, not just about how I think business should be done, but how the people in those countries feel that businesses need to be done. And I feel Trinidadians need to take that into account, and we need to go to Guyana. I personally feel, Shalima, when I look at and I can't use any other business as an example, but I can use RAMS. When I look at the length and the breadth of our operations in Guyana, and I look at the quality of the leadership talent that we've been able to develop over the last 9 years in Guyana, I think a lot of the people who are in RAMS are going to become, big leaders. They will leave RAMS, they will form their own businesses, and they will really help contribute to the development of the country. And I think every Caribbean country needs to be very aware of that. The strength of a country is the strength of the leadership in the country. People who could go out there and lead from in front, build businesses, become prime ministers, become presidents. And I feel if we continue to focus on that, we will do a lot to help the next generation that is coming up. I think Trinidad can contribute to that. I think more importantly, not just Trinidad, but I think the Guyanese diaspora, and I heard Rampersad speak about getting the diaspora to come back. I think to me, I think a lot of the development in Guyana over the next few years is going to be significantly tied in to how well Guyana attracts that diaspora to come back and invest and take a large role in developing the country. And I think a lot of Trinidadians will play a role in that as well. And I also see over the next few years, especially as Zulfi talked about, with the cost of energy being lowered, I think Guyana will become the export powerhouse of the Caribbean. I really do think so. And there'll be a lot of room for collaboration and working together.
Terrific. So I'm glad you raised the point about the next generation, because so Generation Z are considered to be digital natives. We know from what President Ali has said, Guyana really is focusing now on 3 particular areas of development. 1, agriculture, 2, infrastructure, and 3, technology. And so, Mr. Bhagwandin, I wanted to ask, is there an opportunity, or are there opportunities for instance, those people who are born in Trinidad but of Guyanese/Trinidadian parentage? Are there incentives for these digital natives to come back to Guyana and in some way contribute to technological development there?
All right, thank you for that question, Shalima. Are you guys hearing me good? Because I don't know if it's my internet. It's kind of.
We are here. Yes, we are hearing you.
Okay. So thank you for the question. But before I answer your specific question, I want to take the opportunity and the liberty to contribute to some of your initial questions you raised, which you throw to my colleague Zulfikar with respect to the Vice President's statement about Dutch disease, and in the context of his statement about Trinidad. Now, you ask about productivity. Now, Zulfi spoke about the major challenges with respect to our national competitiveness and our productivity. Now, if I'm to extend on that discussion, our level of productivity in terms of GDP, now GDP is the economic metric that measures the productive output of an economy compared to Trinidad. Our GDP right now is about $5 billion US, 5 billion and change. Trinidad GDP is about $27 billion. So Trinidad GDP is more than 5 times greater than our GDP for comparison. Now, with respect to the Dutch disease, permit me to spend some time to talk about the Dutch disease. When our vice president and our president speak about the comments they made about Guyana is not making the mistake that Trinidad made, they are not giving lip service. They are not just telling a story, because what they have said is grounded and embedded in the economic policies, in the fiscal policies that they are implementing. One who studies our fiscal policy is administered through the national budget. And one who looks at last 5 years, let's compare the regime 2015 to up to the point when they left office, when they lost the election. And now with this government from 2020 to now, there is a fundamentally different economic philosophy. Now, with respect to the Dutch disease, I have been studying these countries and writing and conducting analyses and public policy and budget analysis since 2017. And I can tell you, with respect to the Dutch disease, during the period 2015 and 2020, I was very, very worried and concerned. In fact, we've been seeing signs and symptoms of the Dutch disease. Why? Let's understand what is the Dutch disease. The Dutch disease...
Okay, can you hold, Mr. Bhagwandin, just hold for a second, please. We want to pause right now for a commercial break, and as soon as we come back, we'll ask you to continue telling us about the Dutch disease. Is that okay with you? Yes, okay, so I think his internet has paused as well. So let's just pause for a commercial break. Thank you.
Flights to Guyana have never been cheaper. Check out these non-stop direct fares from JFK to Guyana. One way from $150 and round trip from $344. From Guyana to New York, one way from $210 and round trip from $360. These are non-stop direct flights to and from Guyana on American, Caribbean, or JetBlue. These cheap fares will not last, so call TravelSpan today. In New York at 718-845-0437. That's 718-845-0437. In Georgetown, call 227-1701. And in Berbice, call 337-4287.
जन्म जन्म का साथ है तुम्हारा हमारा.
Bollywood on the Beach is a family and friends event with Bollywood Entertainment. July 14th to the 18th, enjoy a 5 days and 4 nights all-inclusive vacation with your family and friends and your culture. Performers from India, Pakistan, Trinidad and Guyana will be live at the resorts with your favorite Bollywood songs. In Punta Cana, Dominican Republic, stay in the family section or in the adults-only section and enjoy over 12 restaurants, 11 bars, 7 pools, play areas, spas, and exclusive beach area. Your all-inclusive Bollywood on the Beach vacation is from $1,095 per person, which includes your airfare, transfer, hotel, and all you can eat and drink. Make it a family and friends reunion in Punta Cana, Dominican Republic. Flights available from all U.S. cities, Canada, Trinidad, and Guyana. For rates, date, and more info, call TravelSpan at 212-243-0865. In Canada, call 647-557-6200. In Trinidad, call Amirals at 645-1604. And in Guyana, 227-1701, or visit us at travelspan.com. Announcing Curry Competition 2022 in Cancun, Mexico.
Hey, y'all take y'all eyes on past week? Last year, y'all take all my cousins to Punta Cana and slaughter them. I drink and sport up. Now y'all want to take another set of us to Cancun? Well, yes. And wait, now y'all taking Raymond Ramnarain, Terry G plus Tasa. Okay, y'all take Raymond, Terry and the Tasa and go along your way.
Bring it down, down, ding. Bring it down, down, bring it down, ding. Hey yo, my sweetheart, say I'm addicted to you.
Make it a family and friends reunion. Curry Competition 2022 in Cancun, Mexico on July 28th to August 1st. For more info, call TravelSpan at 212-243-0865. In Canada, call 647-557-6200. In Trinidad, call Amirals at 645-1604. And in Guyana, 227-1701, or visit us at travelspan.com.
Are you looking for investment opportunities or retirement or even to relocate to Florida? Then Orlando is the place for you. Great deals with spacious land are available. Call Shanisa Jabbar for all your realtor needs at 321-217-1556. That's 321-217-1556. Or email her at shanisajabbar@gmail.com.
Okay, so welcome back. And we were just hearing from Mr. Joel Bhagwandin, financial analyst in Guyana. He was explaining to us all about the Dutch disease. Go ahead, Mr. Bhagwandin.
All right, thank you. So I was about, just before we went to the break, I was about to explain what is the Dutch disease. So the Dutch disease is an economic terminology which states that countries that are endowed with natural resources or rich in natural resources, typically the other sectors, the other non-oil sectors or sectors that are not driven by natural resources, tend to be neglected, tend to record negative growth or contracted growth, and only that one sector is driving the rest of, carrying the entire economy. So that is a simple explanation for what the Dutch disease is. And I began my opening remark by saying, you opened the question, Shalima, with what the statement by the vice president, and then the president came and validate his statement. So I want to say this, that they are not giving lip service. This is grounded in the economic policies of the country. And I was making a comparison with a period when we were very concerned about heading into being affected or subject to the Dutch disease. Because what happened during 2015, 2020, we had a different government, a different regime with a different economic philosophy, pursuing different type of economic policies, which was not very conducive to the business environment. And what was the result? That even in the narrative of the previous regime, the narrative was oil funds, everything we're going to do with oil funds, everything we're going to do with oil funds. That was literally, if you go on Google right now, statements by the former Minister of Finance, statements by the former president, it's all grounded in the narrative. Well, when we get to oil funds, we will do this, this, right? And so when you look at the budget analysis, you saw there was significant increases in consumption expenditure in the budget, which are not productive expenditure, right? And you had a significant decline in expenditure allocated for capital projects, investing in public infrastructure. That's where you're going to create jobs and help to incentivize and build up the other sectors, not just the oil and gas sector. So that was a real concern based on the type of policies and philosophy during that period. Now, when you look at budget 2020, 2021 and 2022 and the entire philosophy of the current government, when they say that we are not going to make the mistake like Trinidad, in the very first budget, despite the challenges with COVID and the electoral impasse, there were a menu of tax measures that were reversed, that were burdensome on businesses, that make businesses, Mr. Ali spoke about the challenges in terms of cost of energy and so forth, and then you're making the cost of doing business even more burdensome with burdensome taxes. So many of tax measures were removed. You saw fiscal policies being implemented to incentivize and to stimulate growth, and for the other sectors, a heavy focus in the other sectors, the forestry sector, the other mining sector, gold, diamond, bauxite, revitalize the sugar industry, the agriculture sector in general. And 5 years ago, in many of my writings, I spoke of the need for Guyana to take a regional lead in terms of food security, tapping into the regional food import bill of close to $10 billion. And, to my surprise, I can say I'm so pleased and happy to see that is exactly what our government is doing, what our president is doing at every opportunity, at the regional forums, CARICOM forums, global forums. He's pushing heavily, and he's not giving lip service. We're seeing actionable behavior of the government. This is reflected in the action of the government, where thousands of acres of land being dedicated for agriculture. We're seeing the incentives to promote the agriculture, fiscal incentives. We're seeing training and development, incentives on agriculture equipment being implemented through the budget mechanism, right? We're seeing a heavy focus to push agro-processing. We're seeing a lot of investment proposals for agro-processing and so forth. So we're seeing tangible actions by the government to diversify and to rebuild our other sectors. And look, Trinidad and Tobago, let me also validate further the statement by our vice president and the president, where Trinidad and Tobago had oil for over 100 years. And in only 100 years, they achieved $27 billion in GDP. Before oil, our GDP was $4 billion, 4 billion US. And so the last 2 years, that this government has been managing this economy, we have had uninterrupted growth. We have had high level of investors' confidence, high level of consumer confidence, high level of confidence in general. We've had political stability, right? You know, Zulfi spoke about some of the challenges, but if you're to appreciate and understand why, many times in many forums I contribute to these type of discussion and talk to people in different forums. They're saying, well, Guyana has all these resources for 50 years. Why we are still a poor country? But a lot of people don't know our history, our challenges, right? And our history is because there was a time when we were a bankrupt state, when we had a different type of economic regime, a different type of economic policy, philosophy, again, a socialist type, which plunged the economy into a bankrupt state. A bankrupt economy means 100% of the population, or close to 100% of the population, is living in poverty. I see people talking about what the government is doing to lift people out of poverty. Well, here is what. When we were bankrupt, everybody was living in poverty. The richest man in this country was living in poverty. Today, if the World Bank statistics is saying that 30% of Indo-Guyanese and 30% of Afro-Guyanese are living in poverty, then it means in the past 2 decades, we have lifted 70% of the population out of poverty. And in the last 2 decades, this is the government that was in power, that administered, that successfully steered the economy out of bankruptcy, the one that now we're classified not just a low-income country in terms of GDP and per capita income, but we're now considered a lower middle income, and we're growing. So if Trinidad took 100 years, right? If you look at our history, those periods of political instability where we had violence and crime and politically motivated disruptions, Dr. Vishnu Bisram, who is a political scientist, is much more versed and knowledgeable in our history than me, and he could tell you more about that. And that is the reason why we have another big problem, a human capital problem, a human capital deficit, where only 5%, less than 5% rather, of our labor force are educated or qualified at a tertiary level education. So that also reflects in explain why we are only a $4 billion economy. Now,
right. So,
now,
Joel,
now let me land. Wait, I will land.
Hold a second, please. Hold a second, please. I'm glad that you raised that. So is it that the human capital that you are seeking to import into Guyana, can that come, for instance, from people
I'm going to come to your question. Shalby. Let me finish.
Right. Okay.
Right. I want the viewers to understand. Let me continue with my flow of thought. So we have to appreciate and understand the challenges, particularly political instability. The point I want to make and articulate well is that comparison with Trinidad and Guyana. And why the Vice President say,
we're talking today about investment opportunities.
Get to investment, and political stability is important for investment. If you don't have political stability, nobody's going to come to invest. Allow me to finish. So,
excuse me, we want to zero in, please, on the opportunities for investment. So, can you just move along to that area? What can people invest in? And are there opportunities and incentives for people who are of mixed heritage, Guyanese as well as other? Are there incentives? Can you tell us what kind of incentives are available for people like that, especially in terms of development of the human capital? Okay. I appreciate everything that you said. Very valuable.
Let me summarize and complete the point I'm making. Sure. Otherwise, the people won't understand what the hell I'm talking about. So you need to appreciate that. You allow the other speakers to speak uninterrupted, so please don't interrupt me, right? So we've got to appreciate that. You see, now you lose my train of thought. The Dutch disease now, when you look at the budget, we've seen a shift in allocation of the fiscal policies of the government, where the last budget 2022, where is the first budget we tap into the oil fund, we've seen that fund is particularly used for infrastructure, for capital expenditure, and that is the type of expenditure allocation and fiscal policy administration that will help to avoid country from heading into the Dutch disease or being a subject to that. Now, to your question about incentives, you're asking if, in the context of all what you said in your opening remarks, if there is incentive for Trinidadians. Now, from where I sit, I am not aware of any special incentive for persons within the region. What I am aware of, there is a CSME, which speaks to free movement of goods, services, and people. And with respect to Trinidadians, you may have to speak to the policymakers and other persons, or perhaps Zulfi would be in a better position to answer that. But that CSME treaty applies. There's no other special incentive outside of that. Now, where you're asking the question about participation for Trinidad and the points that Shaun and Zulfi and everybody else were talking about and the treatment of Trinidadians, I think, and today I was saying this, I think Trinidadians coming to Guyana, I think there is a group of Trinidadians that are who are genuine and who are genuinely respectful and want to work and partner with Guyanese. We have a local content legislation. That local content legislation does not discriminate against Trinidad, does not displace Trinidad. The first local content carved out 40 goods and services or 40 areas where preference for Guyanese companies can operate. And what that act also takes into consideration, our Trinidadian counterpart could come but partner with Guyanese. And that is how you build capacity, and this is the thrust of how we could have true regional integration and true regional growth. If we could share resources and work in partnership rather than a group of people from another country or from another section of the region think they know it all and come here and try to bulldoze Guyanese. It can't work like that. And that is the position of the vice president in that regard. Right? And I can tell you from my experience, there are some Trinidadians in big firms who are very arrogant and who behave with this level of superiority to Guyanese, that Guyanese, they know what they're doing, we don't know what we're doing. Right? You can't come with that level of arrogance and disrespect to work with us. And then on the other hand, I've worked with many Trinidadians who are very nice people, very respectful people, and are in active partnerships with local businesses here. And I've done some work with some Trinidad companies as well.
If I may, Shalima, I think she was asking more about people Guyanese who are born in Trinidad or the diaspora. The role of that. And so I was just wondering if Zulfi, the ambassador, could give some clarification on that.
Thank you, Vishnu. Yes, well, there's a saying that Guyana alone is a special incentive for anyone to go and invest. And I think Shaun will probably agree with me because he made mention to that while he was speaking. But absolutely. There are a lot of investments and there are a lot of opportunities for not only Guyanese in the diaspora, but our brothers and sisters all over the Caribbean to come and to participate in the development of Guyana, in all of the opportunities that are there. And Joel was speaking about the Dutch disease. The beauty about Guyana is that the government's policy is not centered on investing and promoting one sector, whether it's oil and gas or whether it's agriculture or manufacturing. Their program is geared towards opening up Guyana and the development of every sector. So it caters for everyone out there, whether you have knowledge in agriculture, you're a health professional, you're an educator. The investments that are currently happening in all of these sectors, we need the skills, we need the people, and we're not afraid to say that we welcome everyone to Guyana. There's a local content policy that is now in place, and it guides and it regulates any foreigner who wants to do business in Guyana. And it's very clear. And many foreigners, when I was the president of the American Chamber, they see the potential that Guyana have, and they want to come and invest within that scope as well. And like the president and the vice president have said, we welcome, Guyana is welcome to anyone who wants to come and to participate, to work with Guyanese, to work with the private sector in Guyana, to help to develop the country, and more so to develop the region. Guyana is poised at a very beautiful place right now, that our development will also mean the development of the region as well. Because this is the time where we will continue to help our brothers and sisters in the region, just like they have reached out a hand to us when we were in need. And I think that is what people have to pay attention to. Forget all of this thing about Guyana and Trinidad and all of that. That is just noise on the side. That is not actually what is happening. If you go to Guyana now, you will see the amount of Trinidad businessmen that are there. Barbados businessmen are preparing to go there. Jamaican private sector are preparing to go to Guyana. And they're all welcome in Guyana. For the diaspora, we have seen, I meet with people on a weekly basis, Guyanese here in Washington, D.C., or in New York, who are ready to go back home. And whether it's in the environmental field, in the health field, education, tourism, they are all eager to go back to contribute to what is there. They're seeing that government is putting the infrastructure in place. They're opening new lands, they're building highways, they're investing in the education and the health sector, things that are very dear and important to the diaspora as well, because they would like certain facilities when they go back home. So these are things that are currently being done. The government are currently investing in those things. And you will see within the next couple of years, more and more Guyanese, as well as the private sector from within the region, they will be going to Guyana. And I'm pretty sure that they will partner with Guyanese companies, and we will see a very different Guyana within the next 4 to 5 years.
Shalima, if I may.
Joel, just hold a second, please. So I noticed that on the Guyanese Stock Exchange, there's a notice that dividends are not subjected to taxes. And Shaun, let me ask you this. With respect to your company in particular, what are some of the taxes that you pay as a non-resident company or an external that is working or doing business in Guyana?
Yeah, so CSME is one of the most pro-business and pro-tax agreements in the world. The CSME agreement is what we call a taxation at source agreement only. So basically, it's one of the few agreements in the world. I think the other one that's similar to it is Mercosur for South America, where basically you only pay tax in the country in which your activity took place, right? So in Guyana, you have your regular corporation income tax, your typical NIS, PAYE, your salary taxes and so on. And as a business, you have preferential rates in Guyana. So for example, any dividends that are paid in Guyana, dividends in itself are not taxable. But if those dividends are brought to Trinidad, they are also not taxable, even in Trinidad as well. And that happens for every single. So our Barbados business, our Jamaica business, it's the same taxation treaty because CSME covers it. So CSME really is a lovely, lovely treaty, and it encourages the work to take the businesses to move within the region. And, Zulfi made a really, really important point about, making sure we understand it's not just Guyana. And I'll tell you, we don't see oil and gas as Trinidad or Guyana or Suriname. And I'm throwing Suriname in now as well, right? Because there's 1.5 million people in Trinidad, 750 in Guyana, 5 something there in Suriname. But what happened as well, one of the challenges that Caribbean businesses had is for a long time, we were always delivering to a tiny audience, and scale counts for something when you're trying to build a global business. It's very, very difficult to build a global business with a few million people when you're competing against in North America with 300 million people or Europe. And what I tell everybody, no matter whether I speak to Guyanese or Trinidadian or somebody in the diaspora, is that there is enough for everybody. We have not started to even scrape the surface of the opportunities that are available to us. And the biggest threat is not whether Trinidadians or Jamaicans or Bajans or Guyanese get it. The challenge is if we don't do it well and work with each other, it is nobody from the region who will take take up those opportunities and do that. That wealth will again leave the region like it did many, many years ago when we had colonial masters. So for people to really be able to really build businesses in the Caribbean, we have to work with each other. There aren't a whole lot of Caribbean brands, you know. If you think about sandals, yeah, you think, and by the way, one of the best Caribbean brands is in Guyana, which is El Dorado rum, the best rum in the world, right? But aside from that, there aren't a whole lot of global Caribbean brands. And what people have to think about, and Joel spoke a lot about Dutch disease. If I were to tell you personally what I think, what I get really worried is when people start looking inwardly inside of an economy. The day Guyanese start building businesses to service Guyana only, and they don't start thinking about how they're going to export those goods and services out of Guyana and service North America and service Europe and service the rest of the world, that's when things will not go well. And that is one of the things we have to focus on. We have to build businesses in Guyana and in the rest of the Caribbean that could service the rest of the world. Otherwise, we will always be a small business.
Right. Thank you. So, Joel, come in here, please, and let us know which of those companies that are trading on the stock exchange that investors who may not necessarily want to set up shop but invest capital should invest in.
All right.
What are your recommendations?
Well, we only have a handful of companies that are trading on the stock exchange, and there are a handful of big ones that I personally would invest in. DDL, Shaun referenced it, the best producing the best rum in the world. If one looks at DDL balance sheet, recent balance sheet, you will see they have a very strong DDL. This is Demerara Distillers Limited.
Demerara Distillers.
DDL is on a path of becoming one of perhaps the largest conglomerate or perhaps a large regional company because owing to prudent financial management. If you look at DDL's annual report and balance sheet for the past couple of years, right now they have one of the healthiest, strongest balance sheet where they have just paid off a whole chunk of debt they had on the books. So now they have a lot of liquidity. They have a lot of liquidity to invest, to reduce their debt to equity. So they have a lot of liquidity to invest and to go bigger. That is a healthy company to invest in. The same banks, these companies are diversifying their portfolio, and to grow. I love the point that Shaun. We need more companies to be traded on the stock exchange or to go public. That's how you build regional large conglomerates or regional companies or global companies. And I like the point that Shaun made in particular. And I want to kill two birds with one stone to say something I wanted to say earlier when Zulfi was talking about, we all need to work together. Shaun echoed that point. If you want to build global companies, we have to work together and build capacity. So for the purpose of your viewers, I know this issue can sometimes is a controversial. Let's face the reality. So let me tell you a little, share a quick story with you where this problem originated from. And this was during my tenure when I was working with the Apex private sector body in Guyana, the Private Sector Commission. During the period 2015 and 2020, you had, for example, one of the largest chamber of commerce in Trinidad that was coming to Guyana with the intention to set up a branch. Then you had several groups of Trinidadian businessmen coming to Guyana, holding conferences, and you're not speaking to the local private sector people. And that is where the problem started. And so We can't do that. That is what upset us in the private sector, us Guyanese businessmen. No, we don't want to work with Trinidadians, but your approach, your attitude, if you're coming here, speak to us, speak to the local private sector, speak to the private sector leadership, speak with the private sector commission, the GCCI, the GMSA. Don't come and do your own thing and say you're going to do this and so forth. So I just want to share that little bit thing with you. So yes, there are a handful of companies. I read recently the central bank is looking to give a new merchant bank license, which would bring a different type of capital to Guyana, where the commercial banks are designed to only advance debt capital. You don't have a lot of equity capital and the wherewithal for equity capital. So we need to equally develop our capital markets. So initiatives like that will help to facilitate that type of growth and that building that type of global businesses, right?
Okay, so thank you for sharing that. Now I want to come back to the President Ali's statement that there are 3 growth areas in particular that they want to focus on: agriculture, infrastructure, and technology. So companies that are currently in the private sector in Guyana, you are talking about going public. You're hoping that some of them can go public. Can you identify specific companies who, so we might have prospective investors right now looking on, and they might be thinking about which companies can they possibly invest in. They may know some of these private sector companies which are private and can possibly converse with them and convince them to go public. Are there companies in the private sector right now who can indeed go public and develop these areas, infrastructure, technology, and agriculture?
I would say yes, there are companies that...
Can you identify them?
I can't. Well, we have... Let me answer the question this way. The culture of business in Guyana, we have a lot of family-owned business, and we are still struggling with that ideology or that type of culture where putting a company to trade public. I mean, I don't want to name these companies because I have very close relationships with the principals, with the CEO, so I don't want anybody to feel offended or anything of the sort. But there are large, successful, multi-billion dollars, let me use figures like that. There are multi-billion dollar in terms of revenue-based companies, asset-based companies that could very well go public. But the thing is, there is that sense of satisfaction that we don't want to share our wealth outside of the family. As long as the family business is doing well and we could successfully train, the different generation that are coming up, there is no need to go public. So what we are doing, what we see emerging in Guyana is a new culture, and this culture is being led by none other than His Excellency himself, the President, where every time he meets with the private sector, I've been to many of those forums, he's been lecturing to the private sector. You have to change your culture in doing business. You have to form partnerships. You have to form consortiums. So what I can say confidently, I may not be in a position or at liberty to speak of identify by name companies that has the potential to go public, but I am in a position to say that there are many local companies, private companies, family-owned companies that are in a number of joint venture arrangements, especially with Trinidadian companies, that I have been privileged to work on that formation of joint venture, whether it was to do a simple thing as a business proposal or an investment proposal. I can tell you that. So we've seen there are a lot of partnerships being formed like that through joint venture, through consortium. I don't know if this current crop of leaders in these big companies, when I say the leaders, not necessarily at the executive leadership, but the principals, are prepared to take their company public. But what I can say is that we're seeing that there is an opportunity to influence a change in the behavior, influence and change in culture in emerging businesses, in startup companies. And once we invest in the training, in the resources, in equipping and mentoring emerging companies, I think with the new generation of businesses and companies that are coming up, there is where the opportunity will raise to bring companies public. Of course, we also need to do on the financial sector side, on the regulatory side, to facilitate that process. We need to also advance financial sector reform. We look at our financial laws, we look at our financial regulation to make that process much simpler, to reduce the capital to take a company public and so forth.
Right, thank you. So, Mr. Ali, can you tell us, would you be able to shed some light on what kind of policy decisions are being taken to do exactly what Joel was just referring to, which is to change the banking system, to open it up, to also bring in service personnel or consultancies to move the Guyanese nationals forward, to thinking away from family-owned to partnerships and public companies?
Sure. Well, I wouldn't be able to specifically say what legislations are being put in place for that, but I do know that there's a comprehensive legislative framework that is currently being undertaken by the Attorney General's office, and that will address some of the challenges that Joel mentioned about in his brief remarks. So I wouldn't be able to say specifically what those are.
Okay, so you talked about wanting investors to come in. What to you does the ideal investor look like? What kind of business activity is he involved in? What kind of net worth does he have? What is he coming to invest in?
Well, I would say anyone is an ideal investor. Once you have a sound business proposal and you want to come and you want to contribute and you want to create employment and you want to pay your fair share of taxes and you want to basically earn a living, that is what Guyana offers to any investor who wants to come to Guyana. I've mentioned before that it's not one specific sector that we need to look at. We hear to talk about oil and gas all the time. We hear to talk about agriculture as well. But there are investment opportunities in almost every sector that you can think about in Guyana. It is just the experience, your willingness, coming with the right attitude that both Shaun and Joel has mentioned before. And Guyana is a place that you can succeed very easily in once you have that right type of attitude.
Okay, so Dr. Bisram, let me ask you this. You were born in Guyana. You're now living in New York.
Mm-hmm.
What would get you, what would motivate you to return to Guyana?
Yeah, well, it wouldn't be so much applicable to me because I am back and forth in Guyana. I spent a lot of my time in Guyana, going back ever since I left in 1977. So most of my time in Guyana. I think other Guyanese is probably it would be more applicable to them. I believe right now Guyanese I've spoken with here in the United States are worried, concerned about security issues, health issues, and in order to get them to return home to play a more meaningful contribution to development, they would want to be assured of their health care and security. I often hear in Guyana, governments, this one as well as the preceding one, Guyana has no security problem. Well, that's not really real and practical. I mean, there's a lot of fear. Whether it is real or not, people live in a sense of fear. And therefore, that issue needs to be addressed. I know the government is doing its best in the healthcare sector They are trying to get companies to come and invest. Hospitals, I believe, are being constructed. Maybe the ambassador and Joel could probably talk more about a new hospital going up in the Georgetown area for specialist surgeries and so forth. So I think that aspect of it is being addressed, as well as security. The government is doing its best. It can in that area as well. But more importantly, incentives are being offered by the government, not only for individuals to return, but also for Guyanese in the diaspora to come home and start companies. You had asked what incentives exist. There are tremendous incentives being offered by the government through the Guyana Office for Investment, Go Invest. It is called under Peter Rampersad. There are a lot of duty-free concessions being given. Guyanese abroad are allowed duty-free concessions as well if they're returning migrants. And perhaps the ambassador could give some more details on these incentives, especially for Guyanese in the diaspora wanting to return home.
No, you're correct, Vishnu. You've mentioned some of the things. Those policies were there even pre-oil. So for Guyanese who would like to return to Guyana to live and to work, there's an incentive regime that is there for them. Duty-free is applicable to things that they would like to take home, and those are specified in the agreements as well. But apart from that, on a business side, the policies are very clear, and it's open for everyone, not only Guyanese, if they want to invest into Guyana or to invest in a particular sector as well. There's no discrimination. Anyone could go to Guyana and to invest in anything. Go Invest is charged with ensuring that it takes them through the process. It channels whatever they would like to invest in, tell them what needs to be done. There's a Diaspora unit in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs as well that has also been using the past year to understand what are the challenges that a diaspora especially faces and what needs to be done to fix those challenges. And they have been on several outreaches throughout the Caribbean, in the US. I think they're heading to Canada and the UK as well to meet with the diaspora and to encourage them not only to come home, but to show them the opportunities that are there and how simple it is to return home and to invest, to bring your skills, the knowledge. You know, we have many people, and I've met many Guyanese who have left Guyana a long time ago, and they're very successful in the various fields that they're in. Some are CEOs of some of the biggest companies in the world. You know, we would like them to come back to Guyana and to help to develop those companies in Guyana and to bring their skills. So I would encourage anyone, if you would like to go back home and you would like to invest, whether you're Guyanese or not, you know, reach out to the Office of Investment for Guyana, reach out to the Diaspora unit at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, or the embassy here in Washington, D.C., or consulates in New York or Miami. And we will be more than happy to give you all of the information and to facilitate whatever you would like to do in Guyana as well.
Excellent. So is there anything that, Shaun, you would like to add to someone who is thinking about coming back to Guyana, somebody who has migrated, who has gotten to a point where they feel they are successful financially and they would like to return home and make a contribution back home? What would you like to say to that person?
No, I think, yeah, it's a once in a lifetime opportunity, and I really mean that. And Zulfi made so many good points, you know. And I want to add something else, Shalima. You know, there are a lot of challenges on the Trinidad side, but there are a few things that Trinidad has done well as well. You know, you look at our LNG industry, you look at Point Lisas, there are a few things that Trinidad has done pretty well on, and a lot of that has also been where we have been able to tap into the Trinidadian diaspora from around the world, and you had a lot of those guys come back in to help not just directly work in the industry, but build out the support services that supported those industries in Rams. I could tell you that there were Trinidadians who were in New York and Canada for a while, came back and they helped build the company as it is today as well. So I just feel it is so important. And I'm so impressed with the way especially the diaspora unit in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs has gone about really trying to attract the diaspora to come back. They were in Trinidad last week as well. And I think it's so critical that the government gets that right. There's no progress without human capital. There's no progress. You could have 1 million barrels of oil a day, but if you don't have the people in the country to get that going, and you're at the right level and the right capacity, it's not going to get done in the time we want to get done. So we just need to do everything possible to bring people back into the country. And Zulfi also said it, not just the Guyanese diaspora. You look at Dubai, look at their story. You look at Singapore. It's a society of expats and people who come from all over the world and made those societies into the wealthiest societies in the world. And I just hope that Guyana does that. I hope Guyana opens its arms and brings in tons of people. You know, one of the big mistakes we made in Trinidad? One of the big mistakes we made in Trinidad is that we didn't do enough to attract the oil and gas sector in Venezuela when they start to flee Venezuela. You have some of the best engineers and technicians in the world in PDVSA. And we in Trinidad, we didn't do a good job. We didn't have an immigration policy that was clear, very unlike what the government of Guyana is doing now, where they're trying to put those things clearly in place. And had we 10 years ago went about after, Venezuela has its trouble and attracted the entrepreneurs and the capital out of Venezuela and brought it to Trinidad, we would have also been in a much better place. And I feel that Guyana still has that opportunity. And I really hope that Guyana does make that immigration policy very clear and they attract the best and the brightest from around the world, because that is how you're going to improve quality of life for the people who live in that country.
Well said.
If I may, Shalima, I think
Yes?
Shaun made a very important point that Guyana should learn from Trinidad experience, especially at point leases. I think Trinidad, one can't dismiss it just like that it's falling down. Trinidad has a lot of lessons for us in Guyana, point leases being one, and of course the overall experience of the resource curse and the Dutch disease.
Right. Thank you. Joel, what would you, please make your closing comments. We have just about minutes left. What would you like to contribute?
So my closing comment, Shalima, I didn't, in my presentation so far, I didn't speak much on the investment opportunities, and that is a main area of focus on tonight's topic. So extending on what Shaun and Zulfi said about the investment opportunities, the focus is not only in the oil and gas sector. The oil and gas sector can be broken down into three sectors: upstream, midstream, and downstream. The opportunities for Guyana, the upstream sector is what happens offshore with the multinationals. There are limited opportunities there, both from an employment perspective and for Guyanese companies, because we don't have that kind of capital and resources. Where the opportunities for investment lie, however, is to build out our midstream sector. The midstream sector is building the infrastructure, the port facilities, shore-based facilities, storage bond, warehouses, all that type of support infrastructure. That is where a lot of opportunities exist for investment, which requires a lot of capital as well. Opportunities for partnerships, of course, with our Trinidadian brothers who have the experience in the industry. Then there is opportunity to build out and to develop the downstream sector. Now, as a result, so that's just on the breaking out the oil and gas value chain, so to speak. Then you have opportunities, as Zulfi said, in the other sectors. Agriculture, there are incentives to push agriculture. The tourism and hospitality sector, we will need, because we're having all these expats coming, the migrants coming, Guyanese coming, so many people, foreign investors coming, we are running out of rooms and accommodation and the quality of accommodation. So we need to build more accommodation. We need to invest in more hotels. We need to build out our tourism industry as well. If you have all these people coming with different levels of income, different levels of spending power, we need to invest in that as well. The expats, when they come, they want to go and see the hinterland, the kite show and so forth. So therein lies opportunities as well in those sectors. And we are partnering with Barbados, for example, to form a strategy for a tourism sector, drawing from Barbados' experience in the tourism business. Then, as a result of having so many companies coming here and local companies, new companies coming up, there is opportunities for all the professions. There are opportunities for accounting firms to expand and to build capacity, auditing, corporate lawyers, almost every single sector, the services sector, right? The manufacturing sector. The manufacturing sector is expected to take off more so when we start to benefit from the gas to energy project and the hydro project to bring down our energy costs. We expect to see a heavy industrialized activities. And so that is what we can speak at a high level of, to wrap this up. And lastly, opportunities that are going to open up when you understand the massive housing drive. When you understand the 4-lane highways that we're building, several 4-lane highways, new road network, new routes, that means thousands of kilometers of road. That means you're building new roads, you're opening up new land, access to land as well, and access to land for development, for residential purposes, residential development, commercial purposes, industrial purposes. And so we're going to see if those who understand the regional geography of Guyana, but understand all the different regions. We are seeing key development being earmarked. We've seen the Essequibo, Barbies, major projects that are going to open up other opportunities for investment. So now is the time, my closing remark, now is the time for businesses, investors, Guyanese investors, regional investors, Trinidadian investors to come together, form friendships and partnerships, sit in your brainstorming room, look at where Guyana is heading. There is a clear direction, there is a abundantly clear trajectory. Look at Guyana, where we are going in the next 15 and 20 years, and start to build out your strategic plan, your strategic investments to build. That is what we need to look at, and that is how I want to end my remarks here tonight.
Thank you. So what we've heard is that there are many opportunities in Guyana. So investors need to look at capital, inject some capital. You need human capital as well. So those with the skill set need to look at the opportunities and determine how they can indeed make a contribution. The manufacturing sector is poised for growth as soon as the infrastructure is prepared and taxes and so on have been worked out. But as soon as the price of energy is reduced, the manufacturing sector should be able to benefit from that. And so Guyana is the place to be in the next few decades, yes?
Absolutely.
Great. So
absolutely.
It's been a very enlightening conversation, and I want to thank you, gentlemen, for your time and your expertise. We appreciate your being here, and to members of the audience, thank you so much for joining us today for this very valuable conversation. So hope to see each other in Guyana sometime in the not too distant future. So that's it for us. Would you like to add anything?
No, I'm fine. I don't know if those other two gentlemen have any closing remarks.
Shaun, would you like to add anything?
I just I always say, you have to tell people what you've already done, and a lot of times people, I want to share something with you guys. President Ali has been so focused on growing the agriculture sector, and people say, how do you contribute? We are supply chain experts. That's what we do. We do that very, very well. And if you know anything about Guyana and the productive capacity, you go to places like Tiger Island and so on, where you see like hundreds of thousands of pounds of plantains being planted and eddos and so on. And one of the things that we worked on, a project that I was telling you guys before, this project that we're working on is to develop a supply chain to connect Guyanese farmers into the US market. And actually today, into our Miami warehouse, our first container of Pomeroon coconuts, 40,000 coconuts, landed into Miami, and it's going to distribute throughout the whole East Coast. And I could tell you that before the end of this year, you will see Guyanese Edos and Guyanese Lime and Guyanese Dashin in some big supermarket chains in the US. And that's where we work together. You know, we bring our supply chain expertise, we bring our access to the distribution channels in North America, and then we work closely with the farmers and the government. I mean, the Minister of Agriculture has been extremely supportive in a project like that. But that's how we all benefit when we work together. Everybody does well when we work together, and we tap into those large opportunities. We can't do it on our own. The farmers can't do it on their own. But when we all work together, we create something big and bold for Caribbean people. And that's what we need to be. We need to be big and bold about the opportunities, and we need to work together and grasp them.
Certainly. Ambassador Ali?
Yes, thank you, Shalima. I want to echo what Shaun said just now, and really to encourage people to go to Guyana. I mean, seeing what is happening and feeling it for yourself, I think that will convince a lot of people to return to Guyana, to participate in what is happening there. Shaun and his company is a success story in Guyana, and there can be a lot more like that. You just need to make that investment, make that step, go to Guyana. There's nothing that is preventing anyone from investing in Guyana. There's nothing that is preventing any non-national from investing in Guyana. As a matter of fact, non-nationals could buy land in Guyana, which is not even possible in many other countries within the region. So it goes to show you how open Guyana is for investment, both at a regional level and an international level. And the policies that are currently, and the program that is currently being undertaken in Guyana is showing that rapid development. So if you're going to miss out, basically, if you don't make that step right now and put your foot into Guyana. So I'd like to encourage those who have never visited Guyana to visit Guyana. From the Diaspora, I know you've left a long time. Please go back. Please see what is happening there. Call us anytime. We will be more than happy to fill you in and to make your trip to Guyana one where it's productive and it's useful as well, and you meet the right people based on what you want to do.
And that is an excellent note upon which to end. So gentlemen, once again, I thank you very much for this very enlightening conversation. Members of the audience, we thank you so much, and see you next week on Globespan again, when there will be a very interesting conversation for you to join. So to everyone, have a great night, and we'll see you.
Rampersad, Ambassador Ali, and your Bhagwandin. Thank you all again for taking your time off, joining us here.
Thank you for having us. Take care. Bye-bye.
Yeah.